The Pendleton District of the Indiana State Police announced today that they are initiating a crash reduction program in 7 counties in their district.
The superintendent has some pretty clear guidance on what his goals are for the department and how we serve the citizens of the state and the people that travel through it. And it's tied to, his goals are tied to the governor and the governor's initiatives. And one of the big initiatives for our department, well, there's really two, is reducing our crashes that we're seeing out there, and the injuries that are being sustained from these crashes. Let me talk about that real quick. There's I would say maybe a misconception or maybe a use of a bad word, but you hear a lot of times of an accident, and these aren't accidents. We used to call them accident reports. It said it right on there. But it's not an accident. It's a crash. An accident, to me, is something that just you either can't prevent or you didn't mean it to happen. And there just may not be a good reason for it. And that's not true, because these are crashes, and they happen for a reason. And we, through our effort, have identified those reasons that are causing these crashes. And so now we call it the standardized crash report, and that's what every agency in the state uses, is this standardized crash report. It's not an accident report anymore. And it lays out the facts behind why these crashes are happening. It's basically answering all the who, what, where, when, and why. So that is one of our biggest initiatives on the state police, is to reduce the number of fatalities and injuries that we are seeing out here on the highways, and have a very strong, strict enforcement effort to go after what's causing these crashes, to change people's driving behavior, so we can make the roadway safer. And we had a very, very strong effort in 2009. If I remember correctly, we for the first time in the state of Indiana, and this just isn't the state police, this is an all law enforcement effort, but it's one of our priorities to be a big impact on the reduction of these crashes. We set a record since 1925 of having under 700 fatalities across the state of Indiana in 1 year. It hasn't happened since then. I remember when I came on in '93, it used to be up in the thousands that we'd have every year of fatalities, and we were under 700. And you can't put a price on a life. And I'll talk a little bit about what our boards show, and how I try to make it a little more personal for the guys than just a tab on a map of where somebody was killed. But that's our big initiative, is to go after those crash causation factors, identify where we're having the biggest number of crashes and fatalities, identify what's causing them, and then get the enforcement effort out into these locations. We are able, through this computerized crash system, to identify where it's happening, why it's happening, the times of day that it's happening at, and really the reasons behind it, to help us focus our efforts to try to get out there and really make the public aware of their unsafe driving habits or behaviors, is what we're seeing. Another misnomenclature I think that we see a lot through our interaction with the public, and sometimes you see it in the media as well, is when we get all this bad weather. And I know Rod has probably sent out a lot of press releases on this. The weather doesn't cause the crash. It's a contributing factor to it. But an icy road does not cause a car to go off the roadway. It's their speed on that icy road, or their unsafe driving behavior of following somebody too closely, that they don't give themselves enough room to slow down before they come to that stop sign, that they slide into somebody, or they're just distracted, they're not paying attention, that causes these crashes. And then you got the contributing factor of bad weather in there that is also a part of it, but it's not the reason that crash happened. And so you see a lot out there of, especially when we get out there and you pull up to somebody that's slidden off the highway, hey, what happened? I hit an icy patch, or I hit a patch of ice and I slid off the road. No, you were going too fast when you hit that patch of ice. You didn't reduce your speed. And I see it more often than not, and I'll talk about our secondary crash efforts at crash scenes that's tied into this whole process. The motoring public, from my standpoint of perception, they think they see blacktop, and they think they can still drive 70 miles an hour or 55 on a state highway and still drive the speed limit, and that's a safe speed to operate. And then they end up going off the road because they hit black ice or a bad stretch of roadway that's been impacted by the weather, and that they don't reduce their speeds. And we have these crashes that we're seeing that are hurting and killing people. Our other second big initiative that goes right hand in hand with our crash reduction effort, and it's right up there as number 1, 2. You could take the DUI enforcement or the crash reduction effort and make it 1 or 2, but really I would say our crash reduction is number 1, and then superintendent's second is to get the drunks off the roadways. The drunks tie into this. John, you may be able to answer what percentage of our fatal and injury accidents are caused by drunks. I don't recall that
I think
stat.
our fatals last year in our district, and I started tracking this in September when I got here. I can recall, and this is off the top of my head, I can recall 2 from about September on. And prior to that, maybe 1 back last, say, January, February. So maybe 3 total in our district last year, but statewide that number, of course, is quite a bit higher.
It's probably about 20-25%. It's probably right around there.
It stayed constant pretty much, yeah, past 10
that we
years.
see that. I'd have to verify that number, but it's probably right around there. It's within one of our top 10 categories of having the driver that's under the influence of drugs or alcohol that are involved in these crashes. Those roadways as well, but when it comes down to those 7 areas that I've talked about, those are the ones that our department is going to monitor every single month to see where we are as far as how many injuries and fatals are we having, compare them to the year before, and then see how we're doing there based upon our enforcement effort, and to track the enforcement effort that we are putting into that area. That's kind of how we're going to score ourselves, and see what impact that we're having. Now, this is a very fluid process. It's not locked into stone. If we get complaints from the public that says, hey, we're having problems out here on State Road 36 in Randolph County, going through the little town of Modoc and Union, or we got cars that are repetitively passing the school buses here, we're going to go address those issues. We want the public to provide us problems that they're seeing. And I'm going to talk about 3 things called the 3 E's here in a minute as well. But we rely on the public to provide us some of those problem areas too, because we will absolutely address those. Yep. Yeah, I don't think the public in general has an appreciation for, unless they've been either a victim of a crash or a victim of losing a loved one in a crash,
How
devastating this is. And if you look at the bigger picture across the state, we have 752 people lost their lives last year in the state of Indiana. That's 752 families that were impacted in just one year, just in Indiana alone. Across the nation, it's probably in the 5 digits as far as fatalities and things. You know, yeah, crime, murder, suicide, yeah, those are all horrific things. May not be able to stop somebody from murdering somebody, but I truly believe that we can, through our enforcement effort, save lives through our crash reduction effort.